Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Good Friday service. In addition to Thamesview folk, we're really delighted to have church family members from Huron-Shores United Church as well as from Exeter United Church. So glad you're here, and a very, very big thank you to Elva and so many of the choir members from Huron-Shores. We're so glad that we could unite and have this wonderful time together. Just so you can follow along in your bulletin, there will not be any introductions as we go along to the scripture reading or to the hymns. You're just to follow along. All of the hymns we will be standing except for the final one, where I would ask you to remain seated. You'll notice that there will be no asterisks beside that in your bulletin. That indicates you could remain seated. So to start, please stand and join me in the call to worship. We come to this place today to pray and to ask hard questions.
Will God be with us on this dark day?
Or has God turned away and given up on us? Come, all who are weary and discouraged. The God whom you have trusted has not and will not desert you. Come, all you who are weighed down with loss, come to rest. The God who grieves with us watches with us now.
Will
followers walked in the way of Jesus, told the stories to help one another endure, we get so lost in trying to understand the details of the story, so foreign to us that we sometimes miss the meaning. Today, as we visit each moment on the way to the cross, may we find in it a meaning for ourselves, for each of us. May we leave our burdens here so that we can walk away as people free in faith. Nancy, you have to be close to that one.
Really close, okay. A little bit higher for me.
Yeah.
The scripture reading is Mark 15, 1-5. Very early in the morning, the chief priests, with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin, made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You've said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things you're being accused of?" But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed.
The chief priests and the whole elders were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they didn't find any. Many testified against him, but their statements didn't all agree. They all condemned him worthy of death. And some began to spit on him, blindfolded him, struck him, cried out, "Prophesy to us!" The guards beat him. In our country, we assume the right to a fair trial, a chance to disprove charges. To us, it represents order and process. Jesus is standing in front of an angry crowd of people who are yelling and saying such mean things about him, hurtful things to him. They scream at him. And some of them tell lies about him, saying he did bad and evil things. So think for a moment about the times when people have said things about you. Times you have been accused of something that you have not done. It happens to most of us. Lies that we have no chance of clearing or defending. Think about them and leave them here.
Reading is from Matthew 27, verses 24 to 26. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged, and he handed him over to be crucified.
Prisoners who were condemned to death were forced to carry that horizontal bar of the cross to the place of execution, where the vertical bar was permanently positioned into the ground. It was a huge, heavy piece of wood, and it was a struggle to carry such a burden. At this moment, think about the burdens that we bear, the loads that we carry, even today, about the things that are hard to hold on to when they happen, hard to carry, circumstances, events beyond our control, things that are hard for us to handle, that weigh us down. Today, leave the load, leave those burdens, carry them here to the cross, and leave them.
This scripture from Matthew 27, verses 27 to 30. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him, whipped him, and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again.
Jesus is severely beaten, mocked, whipped, made to walk along the road with a heavy cross on a bruised and bleeding back. And then he falls. The soldiers yell at him even more. Jesus prays, God help me to remember that you are here. You ever had a hard time with something? A ladder, it represents fear. To go up a ladder is a scary thing. You're off the ground, in a perilous place that's going somewhere higher. The fall of Jesus represents the things that we fear that come true. We almost expect to fall off a ladder, and when we do, we get hurt. This fall also represents the things that happen to us that we didn't expect, that we didn't see coming, mistakes that we couldn't have avoided, situations that we walk blindly into, the stuff that trips us up we didn't have any warning about, the times that we found ourselves on the ground trying to figure out what in the world just happened, checking for broken bones and scraped knees, hurt spirits. Think about the times when you fell. You felt confused or damaged. Think of those times and leave them here.
Mark 15, verse 21. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross.
Jesus is so tired, and the soldiers know he can no longer carry that cross by himself. So they look around, and they see someone who is strong enough to help carry the cross, and his name is Simon. So think about the times when you helped someone else, even a stranger. Sometimes helping somebody can be difficult for so many reasons. We all have different things that we need to do. We're busy, or we just don't want to get involved. But when we put our excuses aside and help others, we're walking the walk like Simon. Sometimes we may have done something we thought was small or unimportant, but God can transform into something great. Here, we place a circle of friends and the willingness and the opportunities we have to befriend others. May we remember that no act of friendship or caring is ever too small or too large to make a difference.
Luke 23:27 through 31. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless woman, the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
As Jesus gets up, he continues on the road to Golgotha. He passes some women who are crying. Likely his mother Mary is among them. Can you imagine? Can you even imagine how brokenhearted she is to see how much he is suffering? And Jesus sees the sadness that Mary feels. And even though they both know that God is with them, they can't even say anything to each other because there are likely no words to express what they're feeling. Here we remember the times our children or parents or siblings or friends or anyone we call family go off a path that we can't change, one of heartache, even death. And we are reminded that even though we cannot change the path that someone else chooses, we can watch and suffer, and somehow they will know that we love them. That's all we can do. We stand with Mary, wishing things were different. But instead of thinking only of himself and how he is feeling, how he is suffering, Jesus tells the women not to keep crying because of him. He tells them instead to take care of others. And that's what we are called to do as well, to hold out a light of encouragement to somebody else, no matter how we ourselves are feeling. May we put the feelings of others first and be for them a light in darkness. So today we have the opportunity to take our selfishness and leave it here.
The scripture is from Mark 15, verses 22 to 24. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get.
Finally, Jesus reaches the hill that is at the end of the road he has to walk. And Jesus knows he will die here. But before he dies, the soldiers will do more to him. They'll pull off his robe. And almost all his clothes are taken from him, and Jesus stands in front of the crowd with likely only a small piece of cloth covering his body. Ever felt like you were standing naked, exposed? That someone had stripped you of your dignity, your covering? A time when you had no protection, and all your flaws are revealed for everybody to see. We have all been there, and Jesus was too. But this is the time where we take that moment of embarrassment or shame, and we leave it here.
Mark 15, 25 to 32. It was 9 in the morning when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 rebels with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe."
And the soldiers nailed Jesus to the cross. The nails on the cross have come to mean so many things to people in different traditions. Nails being pounded into wood. And when they're pounded, we hear every word that anyone has ever spoken to us in hurt. Every mean word, every criticism, every insult, every angry, hurtful word that people have said to us. These words, today, we nail them to the cross, so let them stay there and don't hear them again.
Survey the
seated. And we'll pray together. Jesus, what did you do that we judge you so hatefully? Despised and rejected, even by your own, by us, our treason, our denial. We are those who crucified you. Yet you still offer us your unconditional love. Thanks be to God. Amen. And finally, after a long walk, after falling, after having men beat him, after being nailed to a cross and suffering such agony, Jesus, beaten, broken, bleeding, dies. Death is final. There's no way to change it. We represent the death of Jesus with the darkness and absence of light. May we understand that the same darkness comes into the world whenever injustice is done, whenever violence is enacted, when children are abused, when bombs are dropped, when people who are different are ostracized or excluded, when people are murdered, where there is prejudice or division, or where hatred exists, the light goes out. And for this, for us, Christ came into the world, that while we were yet sinners, flawed and disobedient, Christ died for us. Verse 4. It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, for it appeared that the sun had stopped shining. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he said this, he hung his head and he breathed out his last breath. And he died.